to the weekly answer writing series. So if anybody who is not joined the Telegram channel, so please do join in. So today also I've come up with a very interesting topic. Now you can see this is a topic. Basically we are going to do the question, discuss social stratification according to any three approaches. Now wait. Now you should first focus at the point that it was a 20 marker question. That means you need to write around 4 pages, right? Around 250 to 300 words, right? So, and this was 2019 paper, and this question was in 2019. Now I took up this question because you would see every year there would be around one question which is also from sociology. So these matlab abhi the trend is changing. Anthropology mein they are asking questions like, for example, the approaches to social stratification. We do not have this, right? And this is part of matlab the social stratification. Briefly we have studied it in paper 1. Briefly we have studied it in paper 2 also. And if you look at the question or social stratification as a topic itself, it is useful in GS also. So this topic as it is important, right? And you will see that many times questions are asked from sociology, sociological perspectives also. So this question even it has a wider reach. That means आपको GS में use होगा, your paper 1 में use होगा, your paper 2 also will be matlab in that also it will be useful, right? So with this we should understand कि ये question थोड़ा sociological perspective से था, ठीक है? And social stratification as it is भी थोड़ा important topic हो जाता है. So we should थोड़ा बहुत we should prepare on this topic also, because as I had told in the last week also, the aim for this series is not only discussing the questions, right? The point of discussion is also that many things that we are not able to cover in the anthropology lecture series, because there we are containing ourselves to the syllabus only. So whatever extra that I find in the papers, I will try to inculcate those perspectives in the weekly answer writing along with the structuring of the questions, right? So let's get started with this. So the question is, now discuss social stratification and any three major approaches to it, ठीक है? So now I have also done the question from the paper point of view, and I've given some extra information also for you to just make notes out of it, so that if any time in future such question is repeated by UPSC, you should have adequate information on that, right? So let's start, right? So the first whenever you have such a question, the question is discuss social stratification. That means social stratification. What is social stratification? That is the first part of the question. And then any three major approaches. So now if you have like 4 pages, okay, to write a 20 marker answer, right? Discuss social stratification should take your around 1 page. And then 3 major approaches. So if you have to write 3 approaches, then each approach should take around 1 page, right? So with this you can almost write 4 pages which are given for the space given for this question, right? And sometimes you need to check also, there are sometimes pages may differ, right? So you have to divide your answer in a way, because discuss social stratification is one part and then the approaches to it is the second part. So you have to give adequate space and points for that. So if we have to say what is social stratification, so we all know that social stratification is a process through which groups or categories are ranked higher or lower, right? So क्या होता है, there in a society there are various groups, categories, right? So when they are ranked or higher or lower, that will become a social stratification. जैसे if we have to take an example, we say in our Chaturvarn system, it's the Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra and the untouchables who are outside the caste hierarchy. So what is this? These are different categories or groups. Brahmin is one category, Kshatriya is one category, so on for all of them, right? And they are ranked higher or lower, right? And these relative positions are on the basis of prestige, privilege, wealth, power. So now there are 2-3 things that you need to know. Social stratification obviously is your grouping or ranking, which is relative. Relative means in accordance to the other. For example, how should I say that a Brahman is ranked higher in social prestige? Higher to whom? Higher to maybe a Kshatriya, a Vaishya, or Shudra, right? That means it is his relative position, right? So this relative positioning or this social stratification can be done on certain parameters, and those are, economic power. ठीक है, it could be political power, it could be your social power, that means the status that is given to your category. For example, this Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra is a very social category also, because a Brahmin is a person who reads the scriptures and all of that, and because of his work he's been given that higher social status, right? So this relative position is based on prestige, privilege, wealth, power, right? And social stratification, if you have to say, it could be based on 2 things: either it will be ascribed or it would be achieved, right? So now, because we are discussing the question, the first part of the question was what is social stratification, so we need to first define what is the social stratification, then how you can achieve the social stratification basis of it, and so on. This would be enough for the part of what is social stratification, right? So ascribed ho gayi, which is given to you as part of your birth or just being a part of some category. For example, when the Chaturvarna system became ascribed matlab now every person who will be born in that family would achieve that social stature, right? Earlier it was not ascribed, it was achieved. Because achieved kya ho gaya? That means one family could have multiple people from different social categories. For example, a person who is practicing or reading the scriptures will become a Brahmin. Another person who has joined the military would become a Kshatriya or that person, right? Anybody who is a peasant or a labor will become the common person or the Shudra, like that, right? Anybody who is a merchant will become a Vaishya, right? So this was what? This was based on your achievement, what you were doing. Okay, that is achieved status. That means by virtue of what you are doing, you have achieved a stature. But in ascribed, what happens is that just by being born in a family, you achieve that status, which is very bad. Even achieved one is fine, because at least your own personal merit or achievement is regarded in that, and it gives you the opportunity to change your social status, right? Because if you work hard, you can change your social status from a lower to a higher one. But in ascribed, the problem is it breeds inequality, and then it creates frustration, okay, conflicts between societies, and this is precisely the approaches that we are going to study. Okay, so this basis is class, power, social status. We have talked about this. On these bases, the stratification or so-called differentiation, different groups is done based on who has more economic power, who has more political power, who commands higher social prestige in the group, right? Then there is wider issue of social inequality. Obviously, these categories build inequality amongst people. Everybody is not equal, right? The groups are unequal, and iske manifestations we have seen in the caste system, the class system. Class system is economic, right? Racial discrimination, slavery, estate system. Estate ho gaya where land is involved. The person who has higher land will become a person of higher social prestige, right? So this is what in the introduction or the first part of the question, discuss social stratification, you can explain this much, and this much would be fine. We have already studied this in the chapter of society, right? So if anybody who has not watched that, please go back, watch this. Now we'll go to the approaches. Now question is asked for 3 approaches, but I have given you more than 3, right? So because you should have ample amount of material if this question ever gets repeated. Now the first approach to study the social stratification is the functional approach. Now if you go back a little and if you try to remember, functionalist approach क्या होती है? What is the functionalist approach? Functionalist approach always talks about what is the function of a certain thing in the society. If it has a function, that thing will stay, ठीक है? And if it doesn't have a function, it will, you know, be eventually eradicated from the society. And functionalist approach mostly sees the utility of the thing, right? So functionalist approach is the same. Social stratification, what purpose is it solving for the society, ये वही देखता है, ठीक है? So now this theory believes that differentiation or the social stratification is due to the division of work, ठीक है? Now one person cannot perform all its or most of its functions in a society, so it has to depend on the different people, right? Now basically if I have to tell you, जैसे कि you know the original जजमानी system, ठीक है? What was the जजमानी system also? ठीक है, इसमें आप जजमानी सिस्टम का भी एग्जाम्पल दे सकते हो. जैसे इफ आई एम टेलिंग यू, देर आर डिफरेंट पीपल, देर इज़ अ जजमान, देर इज़ अ कामीन्स में आ जाएंगे आपके, कोई तरखान है, कोई लोहार है, कोई सुनार है, ठीक है, कोई एग्रीकल्चरलिस्ट है, फार्मर है, किसान है, ठीक है. देन देर बी सम अदर पर्सन, मोची है, ठीक है, धोबी है, ठीक है. एवरीबडी इज यू नो हैविंग अ डिफरेंट ऑक्यूपेशन, राइट? Because not every person can do everything, ये तो हमें पता है. So what is the society? Because people are dependent on each other, because people all मतलब society has so many varied things to do that they are dependent on each other. Not every person can do everything, ठीक है. That is why everybody is, you know, there is specialization of occupation. And due to specialization of occupation, people are interdependent. There is interdependency. So because of this interdependency, there is a prestige attached to each work. Because क्या होता है, every work you need to do, you need to have a different intellect, ability or skill to do it, right? जैसे कि a mochi, और मोची को in English you will say a shoemaker, right? A shoemaker will not have the same ability to make jewelry, right? Making shoes and making jewelry requires two very different skills, right? So a mochi cannot do the jewelry thing, so he has to depend on a jeweler for a jewelry thing, or a dhobi for washing his clothes, or a barber for cutting his hair, because if he is making shoes he might not be able to cut the hair, right? So every person is dependent on each other. First thing is there, that is interdependency. Second thing is every work requires different skill, different ability, ठीक है. Third thing is because everything requires different ability or intellect, there is a reward attached to it. That means a person who's making a shoe, for example, doesn't command the prestige of a teacher, right? A teacher or a doctor will have a higher social prestige because their work is valued more as compared to a person who is maybe washing the dishes at home, right? ठीक है. So because different things require different skills and these skills are valued differently in the society, the problem of discrimination comes. And इसमें you can quote even Mahatma Gandhi, because what Mahatma Gandhi said was कि social differentiation is not a problem. That means if different people are performing different things, that is not the problem. The problem is that we are attaching different rewards to different work. For example, a teacher, professor, doctor, a house cleaner, a shoemaker should all command the same social prestige and should all be rewarded the same. So he said ki the problem is not that people are interdependent. The problem is that their work is valued differently. So if we start value their work similarly, the problem of discrimination or social stratification would go, because the functions are valued differently, they are rewarded according to the value, right? So this differential reward pattern creates stratification or hierarchy. So Mahatma Gandhi ने यही बोला था that if you start valuing their work equally, the social stratification would go away. ठीक है, इस पे there was a counter argument by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, वो भी we'll also study that. So I think आपको functional approach समझ आ गई कि function क्या है, that people are dependent on each other and all the works are, there is different intent, ability required to do that work, and these abilities are rewarded differentially. That is what causes the social stratification. If these different intent, ability to perform an action is not rewarded differently, there will be no social stratification. ठीक है? Next comes in the Marxist approach. Now Marx ka very simple idea was there. He gave two very extreme categories of bourgeois and proletariat. ठीक है? And this was based on the production capacity, because he says he believed that our primary what are we living for? We are living for satisfaction of our basic human needs, that is food, clothing, shelter. That means basically हमको production करना है. We need to produce for our basic human needs, that is our food, clothing, shelter, right? And इसके लिए we need to perform certain functions. ठीक है? So he believed that social stratification was created out of the unequal access to the means of production. Because क्या होता है, if a man has to survive, he needs to survive his biological needs, that is food. For food he needs to produce food, right? For clothing he needs to create or produce clothes, right? So production or economy was the basis of each society, right? For Marx, what was the basis of society? That is production. In cultural materialism also we did the concept of infrastructure, structure and superstructure, right? Which was based on what? Marxist materialism पे ही तो based थी ना cultural materialism की theory भी. It is the same. For him, it was the technology along with reproduction, right? Which was the basic. For Marx, it was only production. That means he had seen the whole society based on an economic system. So he had reduced the whole society to an economic system, which was the basis, or you can say in his words, the substructure, right? The substructure. And this economic system was fulfilled by two people, that is the bourgeois, the ruling class, and the proletariat, the labor class, right? This bourgeois held all the resources to itself. ठीक है? They were the people who would exploit the labor, ठीक है? Take out the profits, the surplus, ठीक है? And lead a very aristocratic life. Whereas the people or the proletariat, who are the labor class, they will get exploited, ठीक है? For a very low wage, ठीक है? Very low wage, ठीक है? Very poor living conditions, poor people basically, ठीक है? And ultimately one day these all proletariat would do a revolution against the bourgeois because of the unequal distribution of power and wealth. तो basically you all must be knowing the Marxist theory. यही है इसमें, that he had said that there will be a capitalist class, there will be a working class, ठीक है? And what will happen is the bourgeois till the time it is ruling and exploiting the people, right? They are going to impose their ideology on the proletariat. Because substructure क्या है? Economy है. Economy is you know it is economy के ऊपर सबसे ज़्यादा influence कौन डाल रहे हैं? It's the bourgeoisie, right? They are the people who are basically controlling the substructure. Substructure क्या है? Economy है, right? And उसी से उनकी superstructure बनेगा, ठीक है? Superstructure क्या होता है? Ideology, right? Even मार्विन हैरिस ने अपनी कल्चरल मटीरियलिज्म में बताया था कि टेक्नोलॉजी एंड रिप्रोडक्शन अल्टीमेटली इन्फ्लुएंसेस द सुपरस्ट्रक्चर. दैट मीन्स आइडियोलॉजी भी किसकी रहेगी? बुर्जुआजी की रहेगी, एंड विच इज इन टर्न imposed on the proletariat. So one day when finally these people will get a lot of frustration in their mind, they will take out a revolt. ठीक है? So substructure and superstructure we have seen. Then थोड़े टाइम के लिए there will be a temporary status quo when the bourgeoisie is they are controlling the proletariat and their services, ठीक है? But there will once come a time when this status quo will be eroded, there will be a revolution and एक egalitarian society will come. An egalitarian society would be built, and this egalitarian society जो है, what do you mean by communism? Communism is simply that the state would now own all the means of production, because means of production तो इनके पास रहते हैं, right? But their services are exploited. So communism क्या होता है? Communist society क्या होगी? When state owns everything and it is distributed amongst the people or members of the society equally. So after the revolution, a communist society will be built. So this is how he has his social stratification approaches, that there are two extreme classes. One is the exploitative class and one is the exploited class, right? So eventually the exploited class cannot remain exploited forever, and they'll come a time when they will take out a revolution against the exploitative and will create a very egalitarian society. So this was the second approach. Then third approach is the Weber's approach. Now Weber, though he was influenced a lot by Marx, he changed his theory here and there, ठीक है? So what did he change? First of all, he did not create those two extreme categories which were created by Marx, because according to Marx there were only two people, that was the bourgeois and the proletariat. But Marx believed that there were more class divisions. That means it is not either the rich or the poor. There are more classes. For example, if you see in India also, there will be an extremely poor class, right? Then there will be a lower middle income class. Then there will be a middle income class, right? Upper middle income class. Then there will be a rich class, ठीक है? And there will be a ultra rich, or you can say stinking rich class, right? So you cannot say that there are only two categories. There are more divisions, ठीक है? And his approach was he defined social stratification based on three categories. Those three categories was class, status and power, right? Marx ने दो category दिए थे. He said कि no, there will be more categories, so class division can be more. But his theory was based upon three categories, that there are three kind of power, three kind of bases on which you can divide the society, and this is the class, power, status and power. Now class क्या होती है? Class is the economic stature, right? Class economic position होती है, whereas status जो है ना, that is more society driven, right? Which is dependent on your prestige and honor. And power क्या होती है? Power is your ability to make anybody do what you want them to do, right? That is power. So power could be many, charismatic power हो सकती है. For example, महात्मा गांधी, ठीक है? He would not do anything based on पैसा. He was not with money, economic power से नहीं कर रहे थे. His charisma was such कि people would do what he wanted them to do, right? So charismatic power हो सकती है, liberal, then there could be other kind of powers, for example like bureaucrat. Just because he has authority, he commands a social status in the society, people would agree to what he wants to, and there is a traditional power also. For example, a strict patriarch in a family, whatever he wants, people of the or the members of the family would do, right? So power क्या होती है? One's ability to get one's way despite resistance from other. That means when power is there, you can also coerce the other person to do what you want. That means दूसरे का जो intent है, you don't see that, ठीक है? It's only what you want them to do, it will happen. So Weber की theory क्या थी? Weber had stated that there are 3 ways on which you can achieve a different social stature. वो किससे हो सकता है? Either through economic principles, which is the class stratification, either through your social prestige, that is your status, or your ability to get your way done, that is power, ठीक है? He was influenced by Marx's idea but rejected the communism. He said कि ये जो communism, ये revolution का idea है ना, that is very very unplausible. That is not something which would happen, and you saw it didn't happen in a very मतलब apart from 1 or 2 countries, you didn't see that idea shaping its way, right? So Weber का introduced, basically अगर Weber की theory को if you have to contain it, it meant that he gave 3 independent factors, that is the class, the status and the power. These are the 3 factors which creates different social hierarchies, right? So these are the 3 things on which you can create social hierarchies, and he treated these as separate but related sources of power. Now you understand. For example, I'll take 3 different people and give you an example. One is Ambani, ठीक है? One is Gandhi, or let us take today's example only. We'll take the example of Narendra Modi ji, or let me write our PM, right? Let me write, let's take Gandhi only, right? Gandhi or Narendra Modi ji, anybody you can take. And the third person we'll take we'll take Ghalib, right? Let's take Ghalib का example. Ghalib कौन है? He was a शायर, ठीक है? So you can read, one is that. Gandhi कौन है? He was a social reformer, freedom fighter. Ambani is a industrialist. Now this person apparently holds a lot of economic power, right? So whatever he wants, he can achieve that through his economic power, ठीक है? Gandhi is nowhere near Ambani's wealth, right? But even then, what he wants, he can make it done because he holds that kind of a social power, right? So he has that social power, ठीक है? And then let's not take Ghalib because Ghalib will be the same example. Let's take a bureaucrat का example, ठीक है? अब bureaucrat में क्या होता है? Because he is a person from a bureaucracy, of course salaried person है, इतना economic power नहीं है, right? He is not a person who will have a charisma like a Gandhi, तो social power भी नहीं है. But what he has is, you can say, a political power, or you can say the authority, right? So these are 3 different examples from different walks of life we have taken, right? So he has a power which is related to his authority, which can also make the people to work what he wants them to do, right? So these are 3 different people. One has the class, one has the status, one has the power. Status bureaucrat का, ठीक है? Class Ambani and power Gandhi ji, right? So he said these are 3 different ways on which you can achieve a social stratification, ठीक है? Social stratification क्या है? Divisions है society में. So these are the 3 things on which you can divide the society, ठीक है? And they are इंडिपेंडेंट ऑफ ईच अदर. मतलब जैसे गांधी है, नो इकोनॉमिक पावर, राइट? दैट मीन्स इट इज नॉट दैट all three boxes if are ticked, then only social differentiation will take place. Even if he has this box ticked, he will rank a certain way in the social hierarchy. So he says they are independent of each other, and then they can be together also they can be used to form a social hierarchy. For example, a bureaucrat decent income भी है और एक अच्छा status भी है society में, right? एक अच्छा status भी है, power भी है, decent income भी है. So they can be together clubbed also, or they can be seen differently also. So this was Weber's idea. Weber का idea क्या था? There are three factors, independent factors, that is the class, status and power. ठीक है? They are treated as separate sources of power, but then they can also be related to each other, and based on this the social stratification in a group takes place. ठीक है? This was his idea of social stratification. Now comes the conflict approach. Now this is a very interesting approach. इन्होंने critique किया था एक तरह से, you can say they critique the functionalists and the functionalists critique them. So obviously if a group will attack the other group, they are going to retaliate. तो वो तो होगा ही होगा. And इसमें you can quote the ideas of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar also, because what Gandhi was saying कि society में differentiation is not because of the occupation or the people who are doing different activities. It is the differential reward system. If they are all rewarded the same, differentiation will end. But Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was a staunch critique of this. He believed that नहीं, ऐसा नहीं होता. When there is a social stratification which is there, it will create or perpetuate inequality forever. Inequality चलती रहेगी. Why? Because it creates a lifelong winners or losers situation. एक winner या loser situation बनती रहती है. Now we'll see how. Basically, conflict theory of stratification बोलती है inequality is dysfunctional and harmful to the society because it creates a fixed system of winners and losers. Now क्या हुआ था? Though the Chaturvarna system was achievement based in the starting, right? That means any person who is doing whatever job, they will be placed in that social hierarchy. But what happened over the years or time, it became achieved social status. That means it became fixed. You could not escape the place you were born in. That means if you were born as a Shudra, you will die as a Shudra, right? If you were born as an untouchable, you will die as an untouchable. That means you will not, whatever merit in life you will achieve, you will still stay in the same hierarchy, right? So इससे क्या होता है, एक permanent winners and losers situation बन जाती है. Just because you were born as a Brahmin, you are a winner for life, even if you do not have the merit for that. And even if you are an untouchable and you have a merit of being a Brahmin, you will always be a loser because you will never be able to achieve that status in the life. So इससे inequality breed होती है, right? And conflict theory ने functionalism को critique किया, saying that it is a dysfunction. Now functionalist का आपको पता ही है, a big critique was they only looked at things with a positive function. That means everything, if it is there in the society, it has a positive function to play. But no, negative functions को तो उन्होंने देखा ही नहीं. And social stratification is that dysfunction to the society. That means it perpetuates inequality, it perpetuates conflicts in the societies, it perpetuates disharmony, right, between the groups. So this was the conflict approach. So losers कौन है? Who are at the bottom of the social stratification and who have little opportunity to improve their situation. And those who are at the top tend to be far more politically and have far more political power and economic power. तो examples आप ले सकते हो. Economic power में कौन हो गया? Rich versus the poor. Poor में there will be a low wage earning labor or a maid. Rich में you can take anybody who is a rich person, right? So functionalist ने then critique किया था conflict approach को, saying that it is not true. Many a times people don't always act out of their own self interest. That means even if a person is rich, that doesn't mean that he's doing certain dysfunction or inequality, because many rich people do charity. You can take the example of the Tatas. ठीक है, कितनी charity करते हैं. They build hospitals, they build so much of social infrastructure even in COVID times. ठीक है, तो क्या है, it is not always a dysfunction to the society. If somebody is rich, they can try and achieve a more balanced society through charity, through positive functions also. So this was a critique to the conflict theory. बस conflict theory ये बोल रही थी that जो social stratification है ना, that is a dysfunction to the society or it is harmful to the society, right? And उसमें you can quote the example of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar also. Then the last approach that I'm telling you, maybe this is the fifth one. Paper में there are only 3 asked, but I'm giving you 5, I guess. Yeah, there are 5. So any 3 you like, you can quote for this answer. So symbolic interpretive approach क्या बोलती है? Basically, it uses the interactions of individuals to explain the society as a whole. Now what happens is, if we take any example, ठीक है, in any community, ठीक है, people only will interact with those people who share the same social standing. For example, जब ये चतुर्वर्ण system भी हुआ, rigid हो गया, ठीक है, when it got rigid, ठीक है, what happened? There was only interdining, there was no interdining, no intercommensality, ठीक है, intermarriages were not allowed. That means you will marry in your own group only. You will dine with your own members only. So there was no intercommensality, no intermarriages. That means people started to be in their own social group only, which was based on your social hierarchy. So क्या होता है, when there are social hierarchies, when there is social stratification, people find or identify themselves to a particular group and start living in that group forever. They start to interact with them, ठीक है, they have similar backgrounds, similar identity, they share similar incomes, education, racial background, ठीक है, and even it can go to like taste in food, music and clothing. For example, if you look at untouchables, ठीक है, in earlier times, there were very few of them would be people who were well read, right? So most of them were uneducated. They had no education. They were similarly placed, that means very low in the ranking. They had very low incomes. They were poor people, right? So होता क्या है, symbolic interpretive approach क्या बोल रही है? It looks at the interactions of people in their daily lives and it looks at the society from that perspective. So what happens when people are divided in these social stratifications? So they identify themselves to a particular group only, ठीक है, and then they start behaving in those similarly, and they have same education level, same income level, ठीक है, they are grouped together in under one grouping, right? So इससे क्या होता है, एक perception बनती है of a social grouping or a social understanding, which is very bad for the unity. Obviously it will be bad for the unity. जैसे what is India में क्या है, there is so much of diversity amongst the caste groups, ठीक है, there are different people, linguistic groups हैं, ठीक है, then there are ethnic groups हैं, ठीक है, there are so many tribal groups. So what is this? Every group is a clear cut group, ठीक है, everybody would know that I am part of this group, I am part of this group, and उससे क्या होता है, you become, there is a perceived social standing. That means if I am a part of a tribal group, I know that my mainstream से I stand below the mainstream, because we have made social hierarchies क्या होती हैं, these are basically society driven only, social constructs ही तो हैं. Today we believe that tribals are below us, very very derogatory and very wrong understanding, but this is the wider perception, right, that tribals, they are not civilized people. That means वो एक civilized group से नीचे hierarchy में आएंगे. Similarly for the untouchables, similarly for the women as a whole, male से नीचे आएंगी in a social hierarchy. So what is this? This is all that you have a perceived social standing. A Brahmin woman एक शूद्र woman से ऊपर है, but when they are compared against a man, ठीक है, दोनों नीचे हैं, right? So what is this? There are clear cut groupings. You are grouped in those groups and you have a similar identity in that group, right? So this was the symbolic interpretive approach. So I hope you learned something new. So I was keen on taking this topic because this has a wider you can use it in the GS paper, you can use it in the anthropology paper 1, paper 2. So I hope you guys liked it, and if you did, please post in your suggestions, guys. I really want you to give me your ideas that which questions we should answer, right? So isme हमने we have discussed the social stratification, and you can write any 3 approaches, and then you can say ki these were the different approaches to study the social stratification. Any 3 you can write, right? So guys, please post in your comments in comment how did you like the lecture and any suggestions for the next week, right? So thank you guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.